Starting off at number 10, a child in the water. So one woman shared her story from 2015. She was hunting for seashells with her children when a storm started coming in on the beach, and the waters were getting rough. Her eldest daughter's already left to go back to the cottage for lunch, so she escorted her 4-year-old to chase them and catch up. She herself continued searching for shells for another 20 minutes before the weather got worse. She started to make her own way back, but then had a sudden, inexplicable feeling of dread. She looked out into the water and saw her 4-year-old daughter drowning. She knew deep down that her youngest was safe back at the cottage, but she could also see the image of her daughter drowning in the waves. So she started wading into the water, thinking it couldn't be her, but she wasn't quite coming to her senses just yet. She had to fight her instincts to save her child, knowing she couldn't swim safely herself through the stormy waters, and then backed up. She ran back, crying, back to her cottage. At the door, that same daughter she swore that she saw drowning was waiting for her at the door, and she said that never in her entire life was she happier to see her daughter. She ended her account saying that she is convinced that the thing in the water was her daughter's doppelganger trying to lure her to her own death. Let's move to number 9, bringer of madness. The great French writer Guy de Maupassant had a lengthy experience with his own double. He lived between the years 1850 to 1893, and towards the end of his life he claimed to have regular visits with his doppelganger. Apparently, it would talk and interact with him. It wasn't unnerving until Maupassant was working on his story, The Horla. His doppelganger came in and casually sat next to him. Then, his double spoke out what the author was writing, which happened to be a story of a man being haunted by an entity. An entity that plans to turn him insane and take over his body. So Maupassant was spooked by this enough to call in his servant, and then the doppelganger vanished. Now, Maupassant went on to finish the story, but also he did tend to lose his grip on sanity himself. He was admitted into an insane asylum and passed away within a year of another despondent encounter. That last encounter was another visit of his double to his room, but this time the double just sat in his room and buried its face in its hands. Number 8. An unexpected passenger. Writer Victoria Brandon saw her own doppelganger during a near accident on the road. She rounded a curve on the highway and saw a huge truck coming towards her. It was driving on the wrong side of the road and she was right in its path. In that moment, she felt a suspension of consciousness and saw a double of herself in her passenger seat. Instead of sitting up, its head dropped forwards on its chest and its hands were folded passively. At the same time she saw this, she said some kind of saving reflex must have gone to work to wrench the car out of the path of the truck. It passed by inches away from her car that was pulled onto the gravel shoulder of the road. Her double disappeared and she loosened her white-knuckled grip on the wheel and then slumped in her seat, likely due to the stress of the situation. But then she realized she was then imitating the exact pose of the thing that was in her passenger seat earlier. Same head down, hands crossed. Brandon said she knew she should have been left feeling frightened from the incident with the truck, but what frightened her more was that the figure that was in her passenger seat just kind of creeped her out. In her words, it seemed indescribably malign and threatening. She imagined that the meekly bowed head had conceived an evil smile. On to number 7, another mother. So a girl saw a double of her mom walking around 2 separate times. The first was when she swore her mom went upstairs while on the phone, and so she went up to ask her mom a question, but her mom was on the back porch. And then her mom denied that she had been upstairs recently, so that just kind of threw her. And then the second time she thought she saw her mom was a couple weeks later, and she saw her mom come stand in the doorway of her room in a nightgown and just messed up hair, just staring at her. She looked down at her laptop again and then back up, and her mom was gone. So then she heard a noise in the bathroom and went to check. There in the bathroom was her mom, fully dressed in her clothes from earlier in the day, doing her makeup, and her hair looked great, not like a mess from earlier. So she asked her mom how she changed so fast, and in response her mom gave her just a really weird look. So fast forward about a month later, and her car is nearly T-boned in a car accident. She said they described it as if something moved the car sideways and away, so instead of hitting the passenger side of the car where her mom was sitting, it hit at a different angle, so the car flipped. So it flipped 3.5 times, but both of her parents that were in the car walked away with only minor injuries. As doppelgangers are known to sometimes be a harbinger of malicious things or bad or death, it's very lucky that it didn't end up that way. Number 6, up in smoke. So one woman was watching TV in her bedroom and the father of her son told her he was going to go outside for a smoke. About 5 minutes later, he comes back into the bedroom. He looks at her like she did something wrong. Then he goes to his dresser and looks for something within a drawer, and he shuts it quickly and then walks to the bathroom and slams the door shut. So she gets mad at him since their son is asleep and she's like, "Be quiet." She waits, looking at the bathroom door and waiting so she can kind of just chew him out for slamming the door. But Then he, the real him, comes in through the front door of the apartment 10 minutes later. And so she's like, well, what? Could you open the door to the bathroom, please? And he does, and no one's there. And then he just goes in and does his business in the bathroom. But it freaked her out for a while, and still doesn't know what happened. Moving on, 3 great historical figures also saw their own doppelgangers. At number 5, we have another empress. The servants of the 18th century Empress of Russia, Catherine the Great, told her they saw her enter the throne room. She arose from her bed where she had been laying and went to see for herself. When she got there, she saw her doppelganger sitting calmly on the throne. It's written that she told her sentries to shoot at it, but whether or not it had any effect on the double isn't confirmed. Catherine herself died soon afterwards. So, could it be a harbinger of evil? Let's see with the next ones. At number 4, the other historical figure that saw her own double was Queen Elizabeth I. She claimed she saw her doppelganger lying still in her bed, like a corpse nearly. The experience is said to have been super haunting because, as I've said, seeing your double is rumored to be a premonition of death. And this was the case for the Queen possibly, as she did die soon after seeing the doppelganger lying in her bed. Number 3, Double Abe. So apparently the Honest Abe had paranormal experiences as well. On the night of his first election, he sat on his couch and looked in the mirror. In it, he saw 2 faces. The second was another of his, but pale and ghastly. He stood up and it disappeared, but once he sat back down again, it appeared again. He was only startled, but his wife Mary was terrified and was convinced that it was a bad sign. She took it as a sign that he would be elected 2 terms. 2 terms because of the 2 faces. But she also predicted that he wouldn't survive the second term because his doppelganger looked deathly. And as we know with history, he was elected for a second time and also didn't make it through his second term since he was assassinated. So Mary was very good at predictions. On to number 2, Double by the Trailer. So a man was helping his girlfriend clean out her grandmother's trailer after she had been moved into a nursing home. It was a complete mess. She had had cats, so the smell was horrid, and the place was basically used as their litter box. They even found kitten corpses throughout their cleaning. The woman he was seeing left to grab some more cleaning supplies because it was really that bad. The woman he was seeing left to grab some more cleaning supplies because it was just really that bad. While he was left alone, he found an animal skeleton with writing on it, and that really creeped him out. He said there was a stillness in the air and he was feeling quite cold, even though it was quite a hot day. Yeah, the air conditioning in the trailer didn't work, so he didn't really know what to make of it. He had to take a break to get his bearings. When the girl he was seeing returned, they did get back to work, but later on, when he was organizing things in the flatbed of the truck they rented, she called out, "What are you doing?" And so he answered her, "I'm just making sure the stuff in the flatbed is not gonna fall out," just kind of confused at her question. But when she heard him respond that, she screamed and ran out of the camper. She said she saw him behind the camper, and the version of him that she saw even turned and smiled at her, which is when she asked the question. So they left right away. Later on, when he went to visit her grandma at the nursing home for the first time, the grandmother screamed and asked him how he followed her there. But that was the first time they had ever met. So really, what was around that trailer, and how had it already been haunting the grandmother when it was his first time there? Does he have an evil twin? I want to know. Does he have an evil twin? Let me know down below. Okay, lastly, number 1, back from a dream. So a young girl stayed home from school when she was 9 to avoid school bullies, and she had a harrowing experience. She woke up from a nap on the couch and turned on the TV, and she was scrolling through some channels when her mother leans over a bar and just stares at her. Not speaking, just staring, emotionless. So she starts speaking to the mother figure, but it doesn't answer her. She kept trying to get it to respond to her, and it kept beckoning. The whole experience felt similar to a bad dream she had when she was younger, and it really got to her. She started screaming at it in hopes of some sort of reaction, but there was no change, so she ran. She ran to her real mother in the yard, who comforted her and told her it was just a fever dream. She was so scared because of her original bad dream. When she was just 6 or 7, she saw her mom's doppelganger in that dream. And in it stood over her real mother's sleeping body, and she tried to wake her mother but couldn't. So the doppelganger beckoned her and she followed because young children are trusting, and that's how she was at the time. But the double of her mom brought her through her house into a room that doesn't exist in her real one. It was just an all-white room, and there was a hulking, shadowy figure. So the doppelganger mom watched as the hulking, shadowy figure skinned her body with an axe. Her mom's doppelganger watched it happen in this dream, emotionless.
Starting us off at number 10 is Emily Sagi. I want to say Sagi, people around the office are like Sagi, I'm not really sure. And I feel like this woman was the final boss of doppelgangers, and you guys are about to agree with me. So Emily was a normal school teacher, very good at her job, except for the fact that she had 19 different jobs within 16 years. In 1845, the school she was working at finally found out why that was. Emily's doppelganger was seen everywhere. Once, while teaching a class, 13 students witnessed her doppelganger right next to her, mirroring all her movements. It then sat beside her while she ate, while she had no idea it was even there, despite everyone being able to see it. In another instance, she went out of the class to pick some flowers in the garden right outside, and 42 girls in her class saw her doppelganger sitting at her desk, while Emily was outside. They could see her outside the window and in the classroom. Some even tried approaching the doppelganger and found they could pass right through it, but that it felt like a thick fabric. Even though she never saw it, she would always become powerless and groggy whenever it manifested. Coming in at number 9, we have the parents. I swear down, if I saw doppelgangers of my parents, I would legit shit myself and continue shitting myself for at least 3 days. So this story was shared by Reddit user O'Carth, who said one morning they woke up in bed and their dad came into their room and told them to wake up before going down to the kitchen. At that point, the user was like, okay, maybe I should wake up, but not entirely. So they started watching YouTube videos in bed, as I'm sure most of you are probably doing as we speak. 10 minutes later, the user's mum is going to the kitchen and does and says the exact same thing as her dad, even though the user was very clearly awake. When they eventually got out of bed, they went to their parents' room to see their parents fast asleep in bed. Freaked out and confused, they woke them up to ask if both of them had told them to wake up as they were going to the kitchen, and both of them said no. So who the hell was walking into her room? That is my question. At number 8, we have the Ouija-induced doppelgangers part 1. This one comes from Redditor Celestial E-Spirit, who said when she was about 16, she was really into Ouija boards and playing around with them, but she had no idea that what she was doing was about to unleash some major doppelganger shit. One day, the user was sitting in the living room with her best friend when her mum walked in carrying the groceries. Except it was her mum, but a few years younger. Like exact same woman, exact same everything, just less wrinkles. They said hi to her, which the mum ignored, and watched as she went straight into her brother's room. 10 minutes later, thinking this was weird now, the user got a sick feeling and went upstairs to find her mum nowhere to be found. When she came back downstairs, her real mum was there walking through the door wearing completely different clothes. Feeling at number 7 slot are the Ouija-induced doppelgangers part 2. Now, if seeing 2 of her mum wasn't bad enough, the next doppelganger victim was the user's brother. One night, her mum was talking to him on the phone as he said he was on his way home. The minute they hung up, the brother walked through the door, talked to them for a while, and then went to the bathroom. 15 minutes later, he still hadn't come out of the bathroom, so the user was like, what the hell? I know he's not having a shit, so what exactly is he doing? She knocked and asked if he had fallen asleep and got no response. The next minute, her real brother walked into the room and everyone was freaked out because they had all just witnessed the brother already come in and go to the bathroom. The mum then slept with the brother in his room that night to make sure all was okay all throughout the night. The weirdest part was that both doppelgangers had darker eyes than the original people. Something demon-like going on. Now at number 6 is the mum. This one was shared by Reddit user Hyperham51197, who said she was talking to her dad in the hallway at home one night and both of them saw the mum walk past them into her room and close the door. They thought nothing of it and kept talking and eventually went to watch TV in the living room where they found the mum asleep on the sofa. The father-daughter duo looked at each other like he had just found out that he was not the father. Flabbergasted is the word. Completely flabbergasted. They both then went to the bedroom to see the door not just closed but locked. Neither of them went inside and the dad decided to sleep on the floor that night instead of venturing into that room. Good call, I would have done the same. Coming in at number 5 is the missionary conversation. This one was shared by Redditor I Am Not Hari Seldon, who said he was walking home one afternoon when he saw 2 Mormon missionaries in the distance. One of the girls suddenly waves at him and calls him over by name, so he goes over there. They start talking and this girl clearly knows who he is acting like they're friends, all the while the guy has no idea who she is. He was desperately trying to figure out whether he had met her before, and clearly she could tell, and reminded him that they had had a very long conversation on her friend's porch a few days ago. And he was like, maybe you met my brother, and she replied, I mean, unless you guys are identical twins, then I think not. And I mean, siblings tend to look alike, but the user explained they definitely were not identical twins. They didn't even look that similar. So who the hell did she meet the first time? His doppelganger. At At number 4 is the staring. This one comes from Reddit user Don, who said his sister saw her own doppelganger. Not the sister's doppelganger, but the user's doppelganger. One day her sister was just chilling on the computer, and at around 12 p.m. the user came in, stared at the sister and what she was doing before leaving. But the user wasn't even home at that time. She was at school and didn't come back till 4 p.m. When she did get home, the sister asked her why she'd been staring at her so weirdly earlier in the afternoon, to which she replied, "I only just got home." Oh, that's not nice. Filling at number 3 slot is Sir Frederick Carney Raj. Now, Frederick was a British Conservative politician who later went on to become an elected Member of Parliament for Essex South East back in 1886. In 1906, Frederick was sick in bed with the flu, so he couldn't come to a few debates that were going on, but apparently his doppelganger could. A fellow Parliament member, Sir Gilbert Parker, saw him sitting on the floor during the debates and went to tell him he hoped that he was feeling better. Parker got no response, and when he looked back at him, he literally vanished. Parker then went to tell Frederick about the situation, which he laughs off, saying he really wanted to be there, so maybe he subconsciously just sent his doppelganger there. However, it became less funny in the months afterwards when other Parliament members continued poking and prodding him to make sure he was there and real and not a ghost. Now at number 2 is the husband and dad. This one's from Redditor Shubbykins, who claims she's seen the doppelgangers of both her dad and her husband. Plot twist, not the same people. You nasty. Now one morning she was in the hallway when she saw her husband walking away from her towards the bedroom. She called out to him and he ignored her, so she followed him to the bedroom to find him nowhere to be found. Turns out he was upstairs the entire time. He hadn't even gone downstairs or into the bedroom. The case with her dad was that one day he was unloading things from his truck and told her he was going to bring them through the back door of the house. But the user was in the kitchen that the back door led to and heard a noise at the door, and through the window she could see her dad bending down like he was about to tie his shoelace. She ran to the door to try and help him out, to see her dad nowhere to be found yet again. Take a shot for every time I've said that in this video. Instead, he was sitting inside his truck, which he couldn't have managed to reach in 2 seconds as it was way down the driveway. And finally, at number 1 is Vice Admiral George Tyron. Tyron was a British admiral that died in 1893 when his flagship, the HMS Victoria, collided into the HMS Camperdown near Lebanon. He was commanding 2 columns of the ship when he told them to turn toward each other, which was a rookie mistake. I'm not even an admiral and I know that. They rammed into each other, the one he was in sank like a brick, and he died knowing the death of 357 other men was also on his hands. Literally his last words was, "This is entirely my fault," and I find that hilarious. At the exact same time of his death, his wife was having a fancy party at their London home. Out of nowhere, the guests saw George dressed in his full uniform walking down the stairs right through the drawing room to the front door. Just as he was about to leave the house, he disappeared altogether in front of their eyes. Someone make it make sense, because I certainly don't know how to make it make sense.
Off this list with the OG Empress of Russia. She was there back in the 1700s and her name was Catherine the Great. Now, I don't know a lot about history, so I can't tell you why she was nicknamed the Great, but from the little research I did, it seemed like she was unfazable. She didn't get shook by anything, which is basically what happened in this upcoming story. She was unfazed. One night she was walking into her royal chambers and one of her guards stopped her. He came to tell her that they saw someone who looked identical to her walk into her throne room. Catherine wasn't having any of this. She knew that she was the only person in the kingdom who could look that good. She took some of her royal guards into the throne room, and lo and behold, there was a doppelganger sitting on her throne. So Catherine was obviously like, kill this chick, she's an imposter and she's stealing my look and we won't have that. Now this is where the story goes dry. I couldn't find out a clear-cut answer on what happened when they attacked the doppelganger. The guards definitely did attack it, but I couldn't find out if it evaporated like a ghost or something, or if it was an assassin dressed up like Catherine. All that I know is that not long after, Catherine the Great was dead. At number 9, we have Angelina Jolie and Chelsea Marr. Celebrity lookalikes are a pretty common thing. Some people are able to make a whole career off of it. You can actually get work in Hollywood being a body double for some famous person. That sounds amazing. I want to get paid for my looks, but I can't find anyone to pay me to do it. I guess I'm just ugly. But this one is so similar, it's a little creepy. These two look so similar, so much so that people on the internet have started a rumor that this Chelsea Marr figure could be a time traveler. If this is true, it's probably the most unfair thing that I have ever heard of. That would mean Angelina Jolie is super hot, a movie star, a millionaire, and a Time Lord. While I'm at home, I can get my furnace to work in the winter. Something creepy about this Chelsea Marr person is that I tried to track her down on social media, but I couldn't find her. It's like she just vanished into thin air. Or maybe she just deleted her accounts because everyone was harassing her because she looks like Angelina Jolie. That could have happened too. Alright, for our number 8 spot, we're going to be heading back to the 17th century. We have Percy Shelley. This guy was a poet back in the day, and he said he had many encounters with a spectral doppelganger. This thing would fly into his room at night, and he said it once floated up to him and said, "How long do you mean to be content?" A very creepy sentence for a ghost to spit at you. How about you stop it with the riddles and you leave my room so I can get some beauty sleep? He had so many encounters with this ghostly lookalike that even his friend Jane Williams said she saw the ghostly figure walk down a path that Percy usually walked down. She said that she was positive that it was a ghost and it wasn't the real guy. At number 7, we have Jimmy Fallon and Mahir Khan. Jimmy Fallon is of course the former SNL star who is banging at guitar and who now hosts a late night show where celebrities play little games and every video of them breaks the internet. Mahir Khan was a Turkish revolutionary who fought for socialist rights and to bring down corruption and a dictatorship. He died fighting for his freedom, and some people still celebrate him to this day. You couldn't have two people who are farther from each other, but you gotta take a look at this picture. They look insanely similar. Literally the only difference between them is the mustache. This is what Jimmy Fallon would look like if he had enough testosterone to grow facial hair. Did Mahir Khan stumble across the fountain of youth in his quest for freedom? Did he abandon his lust for revolution and just say, "I want to be famous instead"? Well, if Jimmy Fallon ever grows a lip caterpillar, then we'll know. At number 6, we have Queen Elizabeth I. She was known for being beautiful, fair, cool, she could do backflips, was the best in the land at Pogs, and knew all the best spots for grilled cheese. Also, she was composed. Some of those are obviously made up, but she was known for being very chill. She had great vibes, like her vibes were unreal, man. So this doppelganger thing really threw her off. The story goes that she was walking into her bedroom and then laying on her bed was a ghost version of herself. This ghostly twin didn't move, it didn't speak to her, it just laid there. All of Queen Elizabeth's servants told her that she should be worried that this is a sign of death, and not long after this strange omen presented itself, she was dead as a doornail. So if you ever see a ghost version of yourself laying there in your bed still, you should start watching the Fast and the Furious movies because you're never gonna get another chance to see them. And what else would you do with your last remaining hours? Of course, you want to watch Fast and the Furious. At number 5, we have Double Brother. I snagged this one off of Reddit and it is creepy. So this Redditor wrote about a morning where he was woken up from his brother screaming his name from downstairs. He gets up, walks downstairs into the living room where his brother was sitting, and as soon as he walked into the room, his brother just looked at him with this blank stare. It looked like all the blood left his face. He asked his brother what was wrong. He said that he had just walked past him and he had this creepy smile, and that's why his brother was yelling his name. Then the bathroom door slammed shut. There was no one else home with them. The two of them got up, ran over to the bathroom, opened the door to check what was in there, but when they opened the door, there was nothing in there. Who was this spectral being from this Redditor story? Did his brother just misremember him walking down the stairs, or was there something darker trying to get close to this family? At number 4, we have Who's That Girl? Alright, we have another one pulled right from the wonderful universe of Reddit. This one was written by Redditor Quiet Voice 4846. She wrote about her experience with a doppelganger she had when she was pregnant. She was in the later stages of her pregnancy, so at night she would go to the bathroom several times. One night, every time she went, she could see a shadow figure of herself in the corner of her eye. When she looked at it, it would disappear. She never told her husband because she didn't want to acknowledge that this was happening. Then one night, her and her husband were sleeping next to each other, and after she woke up, her husband told her that he saw a shadow figure of herself get up from the bed, walk to the bedroom door, and then when he looked down to see if she was in the bed, she was still sleeping next to him, and when he looked up, the shadow figure was gone. She then told her husband everything that had been happening to her, and that's where the story ends. I don't have an update on the mom, the dad, the baby, or the shadow monster. At number 3, we have Mom. Alright, we got another one right from Reddit. This one was written by Redditor Hyperham51197. There's a lot of Hyperhams out there. Well, she writes that one day her and her dad were sitting in the kitchen eating. They were just hanging out, chilling out, doing normal stuff. Then they both saw her mom walk through the kitchen from the living room into her bedroom. A couple minutes later, Hyperham got up to go into the living room and saw her mom still sleeping on the couch. She told her dad, who was now terrified. The two of them then approached the bedroom door, but both of them were too afraid to open it. She said that her dad was so afraid he wouldn't even sleep in the bedroom that night. At number 2, we have Abraham Lincoln. It seems like the theme with some of these doppelgangers is if they show up, this is a sign from the future. Well, the sign is mostly death. So far there hasn't been a doppelganger that shows up that's like, hey, you should talk to your crush. I think she likes you. I don't know, it might work out. Well, Abraham Lincoln did see a doppelganger, and it wasn't about his crush. It was the night he was elected President of the United States of America. And from all the commotion, he was feeling a little worn out, so he decided to take a nap. When he woke up, he looked in a mirror and saw his reflection, but also saw a ghostly version of himself standing behind himself. He thought this was very strange, but his wife freaked out. She thought this was crazy. Her prediction was that he would be elected president a second time. That's why there was 2 Abes, but because one of the Abes was more ghostly, she thought he wouldn't live to the end of his second term. And we all know what happened to old Honest Abe during his second term. He got shot in the head in a theater. It was a huge bummer. Bad vibes. And number 1 on our list is Emily Sagi. This is one of the most famous cases of doppelganger activity. Emily Sagi was a teacher back in 1845. She was known for 3 things: working hard, playing hard, and having a doppelganger that would appear and scare people. The crazy thing about Emily's doppelganger is Emily never saw it, but her students, peers, and employers all did. It almost seems like they were pranking her, like, oh, you have a doppelganger. And she's like, what? And like, oh, it was right there. On more than one occasion, her students saw the doppelganger appear behind her while she was teaching. It would mimic her movements. On other times, they would see the doppelganger walk right behind her while she was passing through the hallways. The creepiest account of this is when Emily wasn't even in the classroom. She had left the kids in the class to study while she was out attending in the garden. The doppelganger then appeared in her chair and then just sat and watched the kids, which is very convenient. You can leave and have your ghost twin play lookout while you're getting some chores done. That's great. This got so bad and there were so many complaints about Emily's uninvited teacher aide that she got fired from her job. That's nuts. They were like, hey, you know, you're a great teacher, we love you, but you got a ghost. You got a ghost with you and it's freaking everyone out, so you gotta go. You can't stay here with your weird ghost. Sorry, lady.